everybody, to another episode of Stories from the Dirt. Today we have a special guest with us, Kendra Miller. She is not only a rebel, but an instructor at the Dirtfish Rally School. And so that today is my main intent of understanding. What is the Dirtfish Rally School and how did you get involved with it? How are you today, Kendra?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, thanks. And we also have Liz today, my co-host. She will be also assaulting you with questions. Woo. All right. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I'm Kendra Miller. I have been working at Dirtfish as an instructor for about 3 years now. Kind of got into the motorsports automotive space back in 2008 when I worked for a small advertising agency that was specifically focused on automotive aftermarket. And then that just sort of led to a series of odd serendipitous progressions throughout my career that brought me here today. Yeah, I don't know. Other than that, I got 2 cats, I got a husband, and a myriad of hobbies that sometimes make sense and sometimes don't.
Excellent. I think we are in good company here. Liz and I both have some strange hobbies.
Right.
So, how I don't even okay, now I'm at a loss for words. How do you decide, did you do rally before? How did you come into rallying from the traditional sense? I mean, a lot of my listeners are, familiar with the Rebel Rally, but you do more of a traditional rally, correct?
Yeah, I do it's called stage rally. It's most people are more familiar with like the World Rally Cross, for example, or the World Rally Championship over in Europe. We
Mhm.
have the series over here, which is the American Rally Association. And it is a set of, I guess, a specific rally. If you had one rally, you have transit stages and then you have competition stages. You have an opportunity to sort of go out ahead of time and run the course and take your notes and create your notes for it. And then you hop in the car. It's a driver and a co-driver. And as a team, you pilot a car as fast as you can through a section of road that's usually dirt or gravel, Forest Service, just kind of. In Europe, they have a lot more tarmac stages than we do here. Yeah, and just try to do the best you can and keep the car rubber side down and on the road.
Nice.
I got into it very roundabout. Most people are like, I want to do rally, and then they hop right in. For me, I was like, I want to be a co-driver. I didn't really have any interest in owning the car or being the one with the hands on the wheel. And so Rebel at the time when it came out was sort of like the closest I felt like I could get to it because I didn't
Mhm.
really know anyone else in that stage rally scene at the time. Um, so I did the Rebel, and then after a few years of doing the Rebel, I met Eliza, and Eliza and I became teammates, and she did stage rally, and so then I started peppering her with questions. How'd you get into it? What do you do? Da, da, da.
Right.
And so she recommended that I take a co-driver course
Hmm.
with Alex and Rhiannon Gelsomino, their Oz Rally Pro School. And they just happened to be having one at Dirtfish, which is like 3 miles from my house or something like that. 3 or
Nice.
5 miles, yeah. And so I was like, well, what a great way to just go see if I even like it, or if it is what I think it is, or if I can even do it, right? Like,
Yeah.
who knows if you can sit in a car and read at 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, right?
Yeah.
Um, so took the class, absolutely fell in love with it. I was like, this is amazing. I have to figure out how to do more of this. And then a couple weeks later, I ended up getting an email from the head instructor at the time, Nate Tennis, saying like, hey, have you ever thought about instructing? And I was kind of like, you've got to be out of your mind. Like, you don't even know if I drove myself there that day. Like, what makes you think I'm going to teach people how to drive?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and so then that led to me going, and I was like, well, you have the opportunity, you have to try out, right? Like, win, lose, or
Yeah.
draw, you got to just do it. Um, So I went and survived that process and moved into training, and then, they started sticking me in car, which led me to finding my first stage rally ride, which was with another instructor, Eric Schaffhauser. And now my sort of more permanent teammate, Sean Edwards, who I ride with now in his little cute little Volvo.
How fun.
Yeah.
Uh, I love, sitting in, I call it the second seat, the passenger seat, the
Yeah.
right seat,
The
whatever you wanna
silly
call it,
seat.
like, the what seat?
A silly seat, that's what they
The
call it.
silly seat.
Yeah, they call it a
Okay.
silly seat in rally because 'cause they're like, "Well, you've gotta be silly to be sitting over there."
Okay, interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, the silly I can be the silly one.
right, yeah.
No, that sounds like a lot of fun. I didn't even know, um, I've done some research on dirtfish in the last few years, but it's kind of new to me. Like,
Mhm.
obviously, I knew there was rally, but I didn't know there were schools where you could go. And now you're
Yeah,
saying you can actually go and learn to be a co-driver. I
yeah,
mean, anybody see my wheels turning?
right, yeah.
What
Yeah,
Avis going on to next?
yeah, it yeah.
So
It's a
when you took that first class with Dirtfish, it was just co-driving, or did they put you in the driver's seat as well?
No, it was just co-driving, so they partnered up with the Gelsomino's Oz Rally Pro, and they'll have classes, and so you kinda do a session where you're in the classroom and you're learning, like, what is the co-driver's job, like, what all is involved. It's a lot of work. How do you take notes? Where do the notes come from? What is the rule book? What do you need to all of that stuff. They do sessions where then like later on in the day we actually go out in cars and we drive some roads around the area to like practice writing your notes in the car and paying attention and doing what's called reconnaissance or recce. And then on the second day of class, you actually get in a car with an instructor and you do a little lap and take notes in the car of a course on property. And then they take off and you try to read the notes to them at speed so that you can kind of get feedback from someone in an environment where, like, even if you call the wrong note, like the instructor knows where they're going. So
Yeah.
it's a little less scary than being in the full race. But
I've
yeah.
watched for a couple of years. I don't know that it's Pikes Peak, but it's one of the famous hill climbs.
Yeah, probably
And
Pikes.
one of the drivers is noted as saying, talking about their co-driver being like kind of the most important because they're the difference between taking the right or heading off the cliff. Um, so it's kind of crazy. And now I'm hearing you say you take your own notes as the co-driver, like you drive the course together and they don't give you notes, you take your own.
Yeah, so the driver, your pace notes are, I'm writing them, but my driver is actually dictating them to me. So as we
Okay.
drive the course, he's describing or they're describing kind of what they want to hear when they're at speed. And it's like old school kind of, Google Maps or whatever, like you're gonna make a right and it looks like this, right? And so they'll have things like they'll call out the degree of the corner. So it's usually like a right or a left is the first thing. Then they'll have the degree of the corner. Um, a lot of them work off of like a 1 to 6 system. So like 6 is like a really fast corner. It barely bends. You can almost drive straight through it. And like 1 is pretty sharp. It's a pretty good U-turn. And then everything at like a 3 is usually like a 90-degree left or right. And then they'll have all kinds of little modification notes about, does the road like tighten or does it get like wider as you come out of the corner? Are there little crusts and bumps in the road? Is there something you need to watch out for? Can you not cut the corner? Can you cut the corner? Is there something that's sketchy about it? Do they think it's going to get slippy maybe? Like if it's raining or, so all of those things. So they kind of give you that and you develop your own shorthand. So it never looks like full written out words. It's just like you come up with your own wacky little symbols and and things so that you can recognize them and call them out really quickly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so that's kind of where your notes come from. There are also Gemba notes that some organizations will hand you, which are which some teams will just use those, but they're not going to be as specific or as detailed, or they might be too detailed because you might be like, I don't care that there's a house over there. Like, why do I need to read that? But
Yeah. And how long usually is a course?
um, I think the longest one we've driven is a stage called Wildcat, and I think it might actually be the longest stage in the United States. And it's usually around 20 miles. I think this last year it was like 22 miles. And then your shortest stages are usually like, I don't know, like 3 miles or something, 3 to 5 miles is like considered like a short. And then average is usually somewhere in that, like, I feel like 5 to 12 range.
Okay. So they're not
Yeah.
short.
They're not short, but they're not super long.
Yeah.
And
And you're,
did I pick up that they also will transit you to like from one stage to the next? So it's like a
yeah.
2 mile and then you transit to like a 12 maybe and then on
Yep.
for the different stages. Wow.
Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of neat. Or if you're running something backwards, for example. But yeah, so you'll have sort of sections throughout the day. A day is usually considered a leg, or if it's a 1 day rally, like a section might become the leg. Um, with your services, you'll have services in between. So usually leave in the morning from like a ceremonial start line that they call park expose, and you'll do a little transit. You'll arrive at your first stage. You'll check in. You'll get all your stuff all buckled and hooked up. They'll send you off the line at your appropriate minute. And then you'll just drive as fast as you can for however many miles that is. And hopefully, you'll get to the end. You'll have some time calculations to do. And then you'll start your transit. And your transit might be 5 minutes, it might be an hour, it might be anywhere in between, and then you'll get to your next stage. And so you usually run like 2 to 4 stages in a section before you go to service. And then you'll have a service that's, however long they deem appropriate, where you're allowed to kind of like fix your car up and correct anything or check anything or fix anything that might have, broken or gotten weird. And then you head back out again.
How fun.
Yeah.
Uh, so have you ever not landed with your rubber on the ground, as you say?
So far, knock on dash, we've kept rubber side down. We haven't had any big offs. Most of our stuff has been mechanical, like we've broken an axle and had to like delicately pull over to the side. We lost a wheel one time, which was kind of funny because we were coming around a corner and I'm reading the notes and I felt like a clunk on the one side and the back driver, and I hear my driver go, "Oh, we just lost a wheel." And I'm thinking we have a flat. And I'm like, "Oh, are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "How do you know?" As I'm like in the middle, I'm like, "Right forward, too." And he's like, "I just saw it sail past the window." He's like, "It's off in the woods now on its own rally." I'm like, "Great." Meanwhile, I continue to feel that side of the car like lean, and like we start just sort of like coasting to a stop on a straightaway. But it was just like, oh man.
Yeah, that's gonna ruin the day.
Yeah, that was kind of the end of our day. But what are you gonna do? That's, as they say, that's rally.
Yeah. I mean, it just sounds so exhilarating.
It's a lot of fun. It's interesting to um, like see the balance. Because like if you go to the school and you get like a thrill lap or something, right? And you go and it's just pure fun in the passenger seat, right? Or if you're just kind of, you're the one giving the thrill lap, like it's just like it's fun, it's work, but it's fun. You're out there and you're kind of playing, and then so then to get in that race situation, once I get that helmet on and we've rolled up and I've hit my like countdown on my clock, it's like it's all business, and you're in there and you're both very serious, and then you cross the finish of that stage, and there's an immediate like, oh yes, we made it, we finished the stage. You do your high fives, you hand over your time card, you get your stuff checked out, and then you move on. And then there's always, I think every stage rally competitor can contest to the fact that when you cross the final finish line on the final stage of the last day of the rally or whatever, like you're just, I don't know, I think I've pretty much cried across every final finish line 'Cause I'm just so stoked, like, I'm just pumped. Um, but it's like that energy or that, like, thrill doesn't really hit you until the end.
Right, because you have to be like you said, you have to be in the game until that
Yeah.
point, right?
Yep. I'm like, "I
Yeah.
got a job to do."
So I read on the Dirtfish Rally School website that they call you the Swiss Army knife.
Oh,
Um, oh, did you?
I could see that. I think I've heard that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask why, but maybe you haven't been aware.
I I I would say, I mean, it definitely lends it's a they don't call it to me as a nickname, that must be just how they refer to me, but I would say it also lends itself well to just sort of my general history over time, like, I'm kinda one of those people where whatever the job is, I can kinda go in and do it confidently.
Yeah.
Um, so, like, at Dirtfish, they're like, there have been times, especially when I first started, where they were like, "Oh my gosh, we need someone to do this thing." Maybe it was like run the POS system at one of the events, and I was like, "Yeah, I can do that, whatever." And they were like, "Okay." So there's a lot of that. Or like when I grew up playing soccer, it was like I was the kid on the team that I had like two main positions, but they would just like if something happened, they could just throw me in anywhere. And I'd be like, "Okay, I guess I'm playing goalkeeper now. Like, let's see how this goes."
Yeah.
So that's that's probably why I'm always like, "Oh, you just want me to drive the bus around? Okay, I can drive the bus. We're good."
Fun. I mean, that's how you get to do fun things, right?
Yeah,
Just be open to anything.
yeah, pretty much. It's like, "Oh, I can do that and not royally screw it up. Let's go."
So I saw at the school you guys have both all-wheel and rear-wheel drive
Mhm.
vehicles.
Yeah.
Which do you prefer and why?
Ooh. Um, that's kinda tough. I lean a little bit more towards the BRZs just because they're a little bit more flowy, and technical, so you can really kinda have a lot of fun with them. But the STIs are great for the pure speed, like, they're really powerful, and it's incredible when you are just coming in somewhere and they've got incredible braking power and you can go through a corner and just take off and you're like, "Man, this is so fast." Um so I don't yeah, that's tough. I kinda like them both, but yeah, I guess I'd lean towards the rear-wheel drive.
Okay.
Yeah, just a little. Not by a ton, but just a little.
Yeah.
I'll often compare them for people. I'm like, the STI is like the hockey player, like he's coming in hard and fast, like lots of muscle, lots of power, like hard into the corners. And then the BRZ is like the figure skater, right? Like turns, drifts, like lots of flow, different precise kind of movements. So
Interesting.
yeah, yeah.
I, I don't consider myself a real like driver. I'm way more of a passenger
Uh-huh.
person, an active passenger, but I
Yeah,
like the silly seat as you call it.
yeah,
That's kind of my favorite place to be. So, um, if you're a new student, like if Liz and I come up there to the Dirtfish,
yeah.
which vehicle do you put us in as
Whichever one
new?
you want.
Either
Um,
one? Okay.
yeah, either one. The BRZs can be a little bit more technical, but whereas like some of your mistakes can be amplified versus like the
Okay.
STI, there can be a little bit more saving room. But yeah, it's just kind of like, what are you interested in? As far as the techniques, the biggest things that change are just going to be like some counter steer, and throttle. But otherwise, it's always going to be a lift, turn, brake, or the actual order of operations that we instruct is the same for both vehicles. So,
Nice. And do you instruct co-driving regularly? Because when I was looking around the website, I didn't understand that clearly.
so I predominantly instruct just driving.
Okay.
The co-driver course is completely separate thing.
Okay.
And that's run by the Gelsaminos. And then we have a couple instructors, Michelle Miller, I think. I've mentioned her before. If not, she's a phenomenal, phenomenal co-driver. Been in the game for years, racking up the podiums. I think she just got first in her class. She competed with her husband over the weekend in Raleigh, Colorado. And so they took home some hardware in that event. So she helps out a lot with that class, and I think a couple other instructors who have done more either driving on the rally side where they've given the notes, or on the co-driving side where they've sat in the silly seat a little more than I have. But someday, eventually, if it works out, whatever.
Yeah, and you add that to your little pull out items of your Swiss
Yeah,
Army
of my
knife.
Swiss Army knife. I'm a co-driver today. I'm a driver today. Tomorrow I'm just customer service. I don't know.
And is it typically like a weekend? Like, is it a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day? Like when somebody attends the Dirtfish Rally School, like what are they getting into?
We have several programs. Sort of the shortest program is probably a half day, and that's usually just learning a little bit of weight transfer, getting to play with the car a little bit, and then ends with a hot lap. Um, we have our 1 day programs, which you're getting into the front and rear weight transfer, a lot of side to side control, um, really elevating those skills and spending a little bit more time on it. And then we have 3 day programs if you really want to get a lot of a lot of things in. If you'd like to learn, how to link corners, maybe get into a little bit more shifting. They are all manual cars, but they've been geared in such a way that kind of takes some of the shifting out of it a little bit. And then we have advanced and elite programs as well. So we can really, and then even if you showed up to like a beginner class and you were kind of like more intermediate, you can always tell your instructor, they're going to meet you where you're at. So if you're super novice and you've never driven a manual before, they're going to walk you through that and then have you ripping by the end of the day. And if you're like a little bit more advanced, or if you're more serious and you actually like think you want to get into doing stage rally or rallycross, like they're probably going to be a little bit more disciplined with you as far as, what they're instructing and how refined and the techniques are.
Yeah, that was a good question. Like, I live in southern Utah. My dad's getting ready to move out. And in my research, I was like, oh, this is something that I would love to send my husband and my father to do together. And but he has quite a bit of experience in the racing world. He races shifter carts.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, much smaller, but I'm imagining a lot of those applications switch over.
Oh yeah, it's a great time. We get a lot of people who've done a lot of track things, or different experiences with car clubs. Maybe they regularly race go-karts or motorcycles, or they're just kind of active, adventurous people. Some of the stuff translates over to the dirt, some of it doesn't. Um, but if they can come in with a big open-minded learner mindset, they're definitely they're going to do just fine. They're going to learn really well, and they're going to come out like a better driver. A lot of the things that we teach, I think, can just make you a better driver every day on the road, right? It's that whole loose surface technique, and you're driving and it's snowy, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh, I have more than just what I was taught when I was 16, which is wild. um you know or you're stuck, or you're on the rebel. Like, I don't think it's mandatory for the rebel, but you can definitely get a little bit out of it. So
So you see it as a benefit for even the level of driving required on the Rebel. Are you out there
oh yeah.
drifting in the corners, Kendra? Are we like
No.
unaware?
No, but you might go in, but you still might be on the rebel, right? You've got your enduro or whatever you're driving, and you kind of take a corner maybe a little bit too fast or something, or maybe it was just slippier, or now maybe you're a little bit more used to left foot braking, which can help you in some descents or like climbing over some obstacles to kind of keep the car real smooth.
Mhm.
um, Maybe you're just something was a little bit slippier than you thought it was. It was a little, it wasn't quite as packed in, or, whatnot.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, on the Rebel, are you the primary navigator?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yep.
do you do any of the driving?
No, not really. Maybe like moving it through the gas the gas line if my driver has to use the restroom
Oh,
or if we're
okay.
unpacking things. I think I've officially driven. I've had two teammates in the past where we were either going to switch off or they wanted to try navigating for a day. And so I
Uh-huh.
think I've driven like one day and scored competition. And then they were like, I don't like it over here. It's too much work. It's too much pressure. And I was like, all right, all right, back to the
It
silly seat I go.
it is a lot of work. I love the silly seat. That's my new I'm no longer a passenger, I'm a silly seat rider.
Yep, silly seat.
I'm
Love
gonna
it.
put that on my door. Can we put that
Yeah.
on the door, Liz? Silly seat.
Yeah, we can put that on the door.
Yeah. My joke is always that I like being chauffeured and telling people what to do.
Yeah, there is a huge misconception of the passenger princess that,
Yeah.
I mean, sure, if we're just going to the grocery store, I don't have an active role, but like
Yeah.
if we're off-roading or anything like that, like there's a lot that you can do from the silly seat.
Oh, there's a ton. There's a ton that you're responsible over there. Like whether you're racing or whether you're just off-roading, right? Like you might be popping your head out the window, you might be to look for an obstacle, you might be getting out to spot, you might be reading the map, you might be just handing snacks.
That's important.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like the passenger princess, like if you're in that seat, it's because you're just like taking a nap and glancing out the window. That would be my husband. Nate is definitely a passenger princess. He wants
Uh-huh.
to just sit in that passenger seat and like just stare out the window. So when we go off roading, I'm usually driving then. And he's like, I just want to take pictures. And I'm like, all right.
I have been known to take a nap when
Yeah.
it's gotten a little
Yeah.
boring.
Yeah.
But are you running the Rebel again this year?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I'll
nice.
be running in the crossover class for Kia with Farina.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
excited. I haven't gotten to do the crossover class yet, so I'm excited for the challenge and just sort of a different course and see what
Yeah.
else is there.
Are you allowed to say which vehicle?
I believe we're in a Kia Telluride.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Those are pretty cool little vehicles, actually.
Yeah, they're
Um,
huge.
they
I can't
are they
believe
are
how much
big.
space we've got. I've been in a Jeep all these years and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, we knew one of the corporate managers for Kia when we lived in Virginia, and they were driving one, and I was like, "Yeah, this is kind of nice."
Yeah, luxury.
Yeah, it is. How fun.
Yeah.
So why? I know a lot of people always ask me because I do prefer the silly seat. Why was it for you? Why do you like the second seat over the driving?
Um, I think for me it's I don't know that maybe I could, maybe I couldn't. I haven't tried, but there's something about like if you're driving in stage rally, you have the steering wheel and you have the pedals, but you don't actually know where you're going. And you're trying to drive as fast as you can without really, like you only know what your co-driver tells you.
Mhm.
And I don't know if I like the idea of that like clock ticking in my head of like go faster, go faster. Whereas in the passenger seat, like I'm like, oh, I know where we're going. This is, going to be a really tight left. This is going to be a, whatever right. Um, and there's something in that is just very, I don't know, calming to me.
Mhm.
I've been fortunate to get to ride with two amazing drivers, and there's a lot of trust when you get in those situations. You have a lot of trust on the Rebel, but I feel like there's an even like another level when you're driving at speed. And I've been fortunate to have two very talented drivers that I get to place my trust and faith in, and that they equally place their trust and faith in me to do our jobs right. And that's kind of the part I love about that is that it's like this really neat just dance. Like the teamwork is when it works, it just it feels so good. You're just out on stage and you're going faster. Like there's a little bit where you're like, oh, with it, we have not gone this fast before. Or, like we just did this stage earlier today and like we are ripping now. And it's wonderful. I really
Yeah.
like it. It's yeah. But you
Yeah.
asked me. Go ahead.
I was like, it sounds fun. It sounds super, super fun.
It's super fun. I've never had a bad day at a stage rally, even when we've been, when we've DNF'd for the day or like we've been out for the rest of the rally, it's like I'm still having a great time. I'm, helping other teams or hanging out, like watching the ranks, like watching the battles between the other teams. It's always good.
Yeah. Such a high, fast pace.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, is there a lot of camaraderie then among all the teams that are competing?
Quite a bit. It's very rebel-like in that fashion, right? Of course, there's always like a team or two who's, or groups or whatever, but for the most part, it's got that same mentality of like what's happening in your car is what's happening in your car, and you can't control anything going on in anybody else's any more than they control what's going on in yours. So you do end up, unless someone's doing something really rude, like just not getting over and you need to pass them because you caught them. For the most part, everybody's just like, "Oh, how was that? That was awesome. How'd you guys do? How'd we do? Oh, yeah." And you get out and you're waiting, maybe you're queued up for stage and everybody's out of the car and they're laughing and, taking selfies and talking about things from the last stage that happened or, how'd you like that corner? What was your jump like? So it's really neat. And then you come back to the pits, and if someone's broken or something's going on and somebody doesn't have a spare or someone needs something or a tool or whatever, like someone's running around, everybody's, trying to figure out, you'll see these like giant Facebook threads that are like, "Oh, we've got a mobile welder over here. Like, we'll help you out. We'll run over," so it's really great that way.
Fun. And it's co-ed, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, motorsports, it's amazing. Like Women in Motorsports, Dirtfish has their whole Women in Motorsports initiative. They're trying really hard. It started off with the big summit and everything, but everything through that is just the car doesn't care and the helmet doesn't care what you are. Like
Yeah.
you're a human if you can, manage the pedals and the steering, if you can read the stuff and push the buttons, like you're good to go. There's definitely a lot more female co-drivers than drivers.
Mm.
But overall, I'd say, especially, I don't know what it is in Europe, but in the US, it's almost close to 50% of the competitive class is women if you just look at drivers and co-drivers. Like um, they're definitely mixing in. There's more women drivers every day, which is
Mm.
amazing. You're seeing more and more women also in the pit crews, like working on the cars in between as mechanics, and it's great. You won't, yeah, it's wonderful.
That's amazing. And you mentioned that the summit that the Dirtfish did? What is that?
So Dirtfish, I think it was about 3 years ago, started with they decided to have a Women in Motorsports Summit. And that was going to take place. It took place on like International Women's Day, which is in March. And they made it Women's Month. And so they had a big, like, 1 day event, and they flew in panelists and streamed panelists who were famous and notable motorsports women kind of from around the world. They had, I think, Michelle Mouton that year. Um, they had Rhiannon Gelsomino, who's the co-driver for Travis Pastrana. They had a couple families. I can't even remember the whole panel, but it was pretty cool. And as part of that, they decided to offer a single women's only class, like a 1 day class, and it sold out in 2 hours. Yeah, which was awesome because it was like, oh, sweet, like it's there. So over the years, so then that year, it actually morphed into like a full year round program. So you can find, if you don't want to take a class with the boys, if you don't want to take a co-ed class, you can absolutely sign up for one of the women's classes, and we offer half day, 1 day, and I think there are a couple 3 day classes, but you'll have to check the schedule online to see that. Um, but then they've had it every year since, and now it's gotten even bigger. This last year, so we had Michelle Mouton again, who's like the winningest female rallyist. You have they brought in Pernilla, I think Solzberg. Then they brought Bex Williams, if you know her, she does all the announcing for WRC. And then additionally, they started bringing in women from other types of motorsports. So they brought in Vanessa Ruck, who's the girl on the bike who does like motorcycle racing, like Dakar. Um, they brought in Michelle Abate, who does Trans Am racing and has her own racing team and has been doing that for a while. And it was just a whole big, giant festival of women in motorsports, which was really great. Highly recommend going back and watching the panels on the YouTube channel because they're so much fun.
Nice. I'll definitely
Yeah,
check that out.
yeah,
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I mean, I don't typically seek out things that are women only. I mean, it's nice to do them, and I do enjoy that about the Rebel. But what interests me is like this rally world where men and women are competing together, which opens the
yeah.
door for you doing it with your husband.
Oh,
Um,
totally. If you think
yeah.
you can, if you think you can race with your husband, man, more power to you. That marriage is gonna last forever.
Well, we have been together for quite some time. And yeah, I think the rebel has helped that in that a lot of times I'm being in the silly seat. I'm often the navigator, like finding our routes and stuff like that. So I think that's helped build that
Yeah,
foundation. Um, but yeah, no, I think we would survive that. I think
yeah,
we would. I think we would thrive in that situation. I'm not a fearful passenger at
yeah.
all.
Oh, that's
Like,
good.
yeah, I like Liz and I are teammates this year, and I've often been like, "Oh, if we roll it, I'll just be like, okay, turn it off. Wait till we are. Oh, good, we landed on our wheels. Will it start again?"
Yeah, can we keep going?
Yeah.
It's
And Nick's answer is always no, because your airbags will have gone off. Oh, right. Sorry.
maybe.
That right, maybe.
It's just shove them back in, and if the car
Um,
runs, it runs. Let it go.
have a night.
Yeah.
No, but like I don't. There's almost something wrong with me. I'm so not fearful in the passenger seat.
It's pretty darn rare. Like, you have to be doing something super sketchy.
For you to be afraid?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's wild. I think I've had, like, people are like, "I don't know how you do it." I'm like, "I've had lots of, like, 15-year-olds in my car."
Mhm.
15 and 16-year-olds, and I'm like, "I don't know, it doesn't bother me, I don't."
Yeah, it will if they're your children, though.
Maybe.
I do find I'm not as calm when my children are driving me around at the beginning. They're
Yeah.
all, into their 20s now and it's fine, but ugh,
Well, I think on the road, it's like all the traffic. You have all those
yeah,
other people, and so your consequences are kind of higher a little bit.
yeah,
Distractions and cell phones and
And so,
technology
yeah,
has changed it a lot.
yeah.
yeah. I know last time Liz and I were out, she was looking for the clutch in an aggressive manner and found the brake. And my head was down. I was looking at something, and she's
Yeah,
like, "Oh, oh, sorry." And I was like, "Wait, what? What
but
happened? Did something happen?" And she's like, "Oh, the brakes work.
yeah,
By the way, yes, brakes
good to
are
know,
good.
good to know.
Go back to your measuring."
Those
I
are
was just
kind of
double
important.
checking. Yeah, just double
Yeah,
checking the
yeah,
brakes.
that's good. I'd rather you find the brakes than want the brakes and find the clutch.
That's very true. That's very true.
That always makes for an
Um,
interesting maneuver.
yeah, that Snoqualmie area up there. Our daughter is in Seattle, so we
Yeah.
pass through there when we
Oh,
are on our way, and it's crazy up there.
it's
In the
beautiful.
wintertime. It is, it's
Yeah,
very pretty,
yeah.
but coming over the pass in the wintertime, it gets pretty sketchy sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, they close it fairly often. Thankfully, I live a little ways down the mountain from that, so I don't get quite that much like extreme weather. But every
Yeah.
now and again, every now and again.
So, What kind you said you're in a Volvo. Your driver does a Volvo
Yes.
now? Like, is it all-wheel drive? Is it rear-wheel drive?
No, it's rear-wheel drive. It's a 1984 Volvo 242 Turbo. So it's a little like too old, just think your classic 80s kind of sedan.
Like a
Probably,
box.
yeah, it's a brick for sure.
Yeah.
It's a total brick. Like you could probably imagine it in its original state being driven by some like mid-level manager type.
And now it's living its best life.
No, yeah, it's been living its best life as a rally car for a very long time. I think if I'm correct on its history, because it's been in the Dirtfish employee sort of family for a very, very long time, and it has a lot of rallies under its belt. Because I think it was made into a rally car like in the 80s or 90s, and it's incredible that it's still racing today.
Yeah. So, I think I know the answer, but how do you win? I always wonder,
You
how
make
do
it
you
to the
win?
finish line.
The fastest, right? Like, you have the
Yeah.
best time? Okay.
Yeah, you gotta have the best time. But definitely, like when I say make it to the finish line, it's common if you go back and there's a website, Sneak Attack Rally, if you want to go check it out. But you can look at like results from past rallies, and you can see that it's common for 25 to 50% of the starters to end up not finishing.
Okay.
So because things break or, whatever, they have an off, different things happen. And so if you can keep your car together and stay on the road, like that's kind of your like number one thing. If you can just get to all of those finish lines, you got a pretty good shot at a podium. And then be the fastest.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
And is it an expensive sport? I mean, obviously vehicles come with a certain price tag, but outside
Yeah.
of that, like just the
Yeah, it can be sort of as expensive or as affordable as you want it to be, I guess. Um, You're definitely, I would say on the light side, probably looking at like $5,000 a weekend for like a more like a bigger national event between
okay.
your entry fees, like gas to get there, lodging, gas during the event, whatever sort of replacement consumable parts you use. You're usually sort of paying for the lodging for your pit crew. Um, for the whole team usually if you're the driver. Um, you're kind of doing food and lodging for them because they're usually volunteering their time otherwise. If you want better people or you have better people or you just want your friends to keep coming out and helping you, you might kick them a little money as well.
Okay.
But so I'd say that's kind of on the lower end. And then you have all the way up, obviously, like Subaru has their, $1 million a year program. There are teams that spend 10, $20,000 a weekend. There's rental programs where you can kind of arrive and drive. So there are a couple groups that do that that'll rent out some of their cars, and I think those usually start at like $10,000 to $20,000 a weekend. Um, but yeah,
Like, does that come with pit crew and parts?
yeah. Usually, I think a lot of the arrive and drive programs, it's like I think they mostly cover like the car, your crew, getting the vehicle there and from, a recce car, and then there's different, you can bump it up or bump it down depending on how it goes. And then the biggest thing about those though is like you wreck it, you bought it. You're definitely so you better be prepared for that side of it too.
And then, as let's say, if you're an amateur or entry level,
Mhm.
if you win and you podium, like what can you win? I know we all know in the Rebel you get a nice little pat on the back and a plaque, right? Like you did it, congratulations, you have some bragging rights. But I'm hoping in a field like that, maybe you do you win something?
No, not really in the
No?
US. Yeah, there's a couple of minor contingency programs where you might be able to get, a little bit of money if you happen to run the product and have the sticker on the car and but
Yeah.
it's mostly you just kind of get a trophy and bragging rights to be like I was the fastest in the woods today.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's definitely like when you come out, if you go out to a stage rally, obviously being a little Pacific Northwest bias, like Oregon Trail is a great one to come and watch, even though the logistics are a little bit crazy. Olympus used to be a WRC stage, so that one can be fun to watch, but it doesn't have as many spectator stage spots usually.
Hmm.
Um, but you'll find huge crowds, cowbells ringing, and you can just see when you look at the competition, like, yeah, you have the big Subaru cars, but then you also have like someone running like a Chevy Supersonic or like a Honda Fit or whatever, and you have like everything in between, and you have new cars and old cars and like all kinds of different budgets, and everybody's out there running the same roads. And they're split into classes, but it's really fun to just kind of see like what everybody brought out.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fun.
yeah.
Do the cars end up in different classes, or is it like the driver,
The
co-driver?
cars. Yeah, so within it, so they have classes based on the cars and the engines. So you've got like open four-wheel drive, and you've got like naturally aspirated four-wheel drive, and you've got, open two-wheel drive, which is usually like you can modify it as much as you want. And then you've got like limited, which is a little bit more stock, doesn't have turbos. And so they kind of have all these classes and separations to break out the vehicles. And then within those classes, they rank you on what they call a speed factor, which is sort of like your results from previous rallies. So if you're faster, you get to start a little bit higher in the order. If you're slower, you are down in the back at the bottom. That might change during the day. If people are faster or slower, you can kind of jockey in between or ask to swap people if you've been catching someone a lot. But yeah, so that's kind of how they line you up.
Fun.
So cars will then, I guess that makes sense that the cars would catch each other on the course potentially.
Yeah, they can, especially like longer ones sometimes. But yeah, it's good.
What's the start interval between usually?
Um, About a minute. It's usually a minute. So, like, sometimes the faster cars, like, if you had, like, Semenuk, Pastrana, Albert, or whatever, you have those guys at the top that have the super, super fast cars, and there's the super, super fast drivers. They might give them 2 minutes, because they don't want those guys catching each other. They want them to have, like, a nice, clean, dust-free, experience
Right. Yeah.
as much as they can, and then the rest of us in the back. Almost pours in the back. We get 1 minute start lines, unless they think the dust is so bad that they don't want people crashing or risking it, and then they might space this out a little bit more. But otherwise, it's generally a minute.
Okay. And like a nice turnout race, like how many vehicles do you get?
Um, you're probably. I mean, some of them are pretty open. I'd say up here, I want to say the starting class is usually around like between 60 and 80 cars.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're pretty big.
Fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So to a new female who's just discovering rally,
Yeah.
what is the first thing that you should do? What's your advice?
Um, I'd say go to one. Go to one, go to a rally, volunteer for one. They're always looking for ham operators. So if you have your ham, that's a great way to actually get put on a really cool corner and have a nice spectator spot. And then your job is to like, call if there's an incident. But yeah, you could sit on the start line all day. They've got all kinds of jobs. They're always looking for volunteers, and everyone's always grateful that the volunteers are there because we wouldn't be able to do it otherwise. I think it's a great way to get familiar, know the people, learn what it's all about, see the flow of the event before you ever put a helmet on. And then after that, I'd say like, well, what job do you want? Do you want to drive? Are you not sure? Like, go take a class, whether it's at Dirtfish. I think there's two other rally schools in the U.S. So it's like, go to your nearest one or go to the one that sets your heart alight.
Yeah.
Do you think it's co-driving? Like, go take a co-driver class. Although I'd highly recommend the co-driver class for both people because they teach the pace note system. So even for a driver, it's good for the driver to kind of like sit through that and understand and kind of, especially if they've never done their own pace notes before, to kind of learn that process as well. But
Yeah. And then when you say volunteer, you have to go to each individual event and find the like a volunteer button or
yeah, yep.
okay.
So, or any of their Facebook pages. So if you go to like the ARA main site, they'll have the schedule there with like links to all the different rallies, and then they'll have a volunteer sign up button, and you just click into it and sign up, and they'll ask you some questions to kind of figure out where they're going to put you, or what job they think is going to be best for you. And then they'll send you emails and coordinate. Usually volunteers get great goodie bags because the rallies usually do have sponsors, and they'll put, t-shirts, or you'll get free lunches and things like that. So
I like
yeah.
snacks.
Yeah, snacks are always good. And I think the great thing is like I always watch it and like we're always so grateful, but like all day you're gonna be doing whatever job it is you're doing at the rally, and everyone in a car is gonna be like, thank you, we appreciate you, we love you. So you're just gonna get this like love bomb all day long.
Yeah, that's the best.
Yeah.
My husband used to race mountain bikes, and I would work the races a lot.
Yeah.
And he did triathlon and stuff like that. And
Oh man, that's
yeah, that
cool.
was always my favorite.
Yeah, you just hang out with everybody and see how they're doing, and
Yeah,
that's a
all the
good
fun,
time.
none of the stress.
Yeah. Totally. You're like, oh, I'm just here for high fives and to pet puppies.
And the snacks, Kendra,
And
the
the
snacks.
snacks.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun way to start. I'm in.
Yeah.
Let's volunteer.
Yeah. And they're such a great group of people too, because they just love the sport, and so they're just like pumped to be there. They're happy to bring everybody in. It's definitely one of the most like welcoming type of communities too. You just go up and you go, I'm interested, and everybody's like, come here, friend.
Well, we will tell you more.
Yeah, let us. Yeah, it's a cult, but not a cult.
When is your next rally?
Mm. The next rally that Sean and I are doing is going to be Tour de Forest, which is a small regional rally up here, and it's actually the weekend before the Rebelle.
Okay.
So I'll go
Well,
do yeah. So I'll go
I
do
won't be volunteering for that one.
no, probably not.
No,
No, probably not that
don't
one.
break an arm.
Yeah, nah.
Yeah,
It'll be all right.
you'll be fine.
Yeah, it's a little small one, but it's super fun. Good roads, fast. Weather's usually all right, so that's kind of nice. And then I'll
Yeah.
get done with that and get on an airplane probably on Monday and head to the Rebelle.
Yeah, to Mammoth again.
Mammoth
I hope
again. Are you
I know. I
excited?
hope they don't put us in Owens Valley though, because of what I learned is the temperature inversion, and that's why it was so cold down there.
Oh, I mean,
So,
it wasn't the coldest. It wasn't the coldest Rebelle night I've ever had. It was pretty balmy compared to some, but
oh, for me, it was cold.
yeah.
I
I
was
mean,
cold.
it was cold and I was cold, but we've had some. I think one of the coldest nights was when they sent us up Paiute Mountain I think it's outside of Ridgecrest, and we
Okay.
slept in this like field, and I'm positive it was either that night or it was like year 2, and I'm like, I know it was negative something.
Oh,
Um, yeah, you got out and it was like you'd step on the grass in the field and it would just snap because it was frozen. And then yeah, there was another year. I think it was 2018. The water truck froze. So it was like thank God you all have 5 gallons of water in your car because we're not going to be able to give you water this morning. Like, see ya. Those were
yeah.
those were some cold nights, but that's
Well,
your
fortunately, I missed those years on the
yeah.
valley.
Yeah. Be very grateful.
Yeah.
Um, you just pack an extra sleeping bag liner, and like you get the big like hot hands, and then you like stuff them in your sports bra and like in the waistband of your yoga pants, and then you like put the little hand ones in your socks, and
I had none of that last year. I was highly unprepared for the level of cold
yeah.
that is Owens Valley.
Well, you just don't. That's the funny thing about the rel, like you just never know, right?
No.
So then when people are like, "Oh, I didn't," like there was one year that I remember. I don't think it got below, even at night. I don't think it got below 50 degrees.
Mm.
And I think I wore shorts the entire rally, like, just shorts and a sweatshirt until, like, we got until, like, day 3, and then I was, like, shorts and a tank top the rest of the time, and it was like, "Wow, I didn't need my 0 degree bag. I didn't need my big puffy," but then it was like, "Still gotta pack
Yeah.
it next year because I don't know where we're gonna be," and it could be I might wear my puffy every day until Glamis,
Dang right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So is there any comparing the Rebel to this other style of rally? Like, which do you like better? If they ran the Rebel multiple times a year, like, would that be your sport, or do you like having them both in your life?
No, I like them both. They're different. I had someone ask me one time if stage rally ruined the Rebel, thinking that like speed is the ultimate winner, and I'm like,
Mm,
they're not comparable. The biggest thing you'll see the skills that I've taken, I am grateful for the fact that I did the Rebel before I got into stage rally because there are things like they give us like tracks like KMZ files and whatnot, and like we have to make our own. I'll make my own maps sometimes. I'll put stuff in Onyx off road for recce, like being able to work all of that stuff, but then also being like, I get my phone and a GPS. So, or like, making plans for the day and they'll give us lat long coordinates for checkpoints and things for like our different time controls. And so there are things or like the road books. We get a road book that we use during transit and recce so that we know where we're supposed to be going. And then we have and it's like they look kind of similar to the Rebel ones. And I think I would have had a much harder time had I not had the Rebel experience first. And the speed is great and it's super fun, but it's just a totally different thing. And then the Rebel, I'm like, I don't know if you could do that more than once a year, being that it's because it's 7 day, right? 7 days of scored competition. Like it's a big event. They're long days. Like, and it's hard. It is hard. As many times as I've done it, it doesn't really get easier. The only thing that gets easier is my packing list, right? But I love the adventure of that. I love that it's a little bit of a slower pace.
yeah.
Right? Like the vistas, like how many sunsets have you seen that made you almost want to cry because they were just so gorgeous and you're like, where would I get to like can't do that over there. Like that's a completely different thing. Like so
Yeah.
yeah, I love the Rebel stuff and I think it's fun. It's a wonderful game and it's um probably always be something that I do, but I can't
Yeah.
do that all year. I think if I had to do that 4 times a year, I might I might cry. Like, it's too much.
Yeah, I always cry anyways. I'm a
Yeah.
crier. Like you said, you cry at the finish of
Yeah,
every rally. Yeah, I'm
yeah,
always crying at the end
yeah,
of it. In my
yeah.
first year, I was like trying to get the cameras out of my face, and this year I was
Uh,
like, whatever, I'm crying, bring
yeah,
it.
bring it. Let's yeah, it's just
Yeah.
what we do. Today was hard, and we're really glad it's over. And we're
Yeah.
so proud of ourselves for, getting there. I guess that's
Heck
kind of the
yeah.
same in both events, right? Like, you're just glad you made it through the day and that you did the hard thing.
Hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I see what you're saying. One is like the slow pace, and the other one is the fast pace. Like easier, not easier, different, just like in and out a little faster.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of hard work and organization that goes in ahead of time, and then the event is the payoff. Whereas, like, kind of the Rebel, like your hard work happens during the event. Um, you get
Yeah.
all those challenges, but they help each other. The skills that I've gotten from both have started to like cross over and elevate each other. Um, I don't because the Rebel, like when something happens with the rally car, I'm like, we got a part? Do we have a ratchet strap somewhere? Like, let's just,
Zip tie.
there's never any like, it's like we can fix it. We can get it back to service and run the next stage. Let's go.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't, they're just, yeah, they're just two totally different things. Be like,
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm just now waking up to this. Like, I mean, I've known about rally, but I really like understanding and learning about dirtfish since I've been on the West Coast and more involved with the Rebel, and there are several Rebels who take part in the dirtfish programs.
Yeah.
Just finding it more like attainable.
Uh-huh.
It's very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not something I ever thought I would be doing at this phase of my life, like,
Yeah.
you know. Um but yeah, no, it's great, but it's also not a very popular sport in the US. Like it's surprisingly popular but also like unknown.
Mhm.
Um I'm not sure why that is, but I think it's just maybe hard to like televise, right? I feel like the
Mhm.
Rebel probably are out in the woods and like hard
Yeah.
places, but yeah, everyone should go to one. They're so great.
Because they're pretty big in Europe, right? I mean, I've
Really big in Europe.
my husband's been really into rally since I've met him, and I remember watching, like, we'd watch rally that's going on in Europe
Yeah.
and stuff, and you're seeing cars flying around turns and stuff, and like tons of spectators. So well
They're
televised over there.
It's well televised over there. Because the countries are kind of smaller, I think that they have more opportunity to actually have spectators. And they're usually racing through towns and not always like on crazy dirt, like back roads in the middle of the forest. Um, but but it's also some place where on an amateur level, like you could rally every weekend if you had, the funds and could keep your car together or re-prep it in time. Like there's so much all the time, all year round, like constantly anywhere. So it's just huge there. So they just have that like real grassroots, like from the very bottom up. People are getting involved in stage rally at like 14, 15, 16 years old or whatever, as soon as they'll let them compete. So
If they're racing through towns and stuff, there's a lot more opportunity for just people in general to see it then too. So,
yeah. Well, or even if you're like,
shit, what's this?
yeah, they'll be racing out through fields or something, and then it's like, well, yeah, now you've got these like you've seen them. They've got the like stone stone walls on either side of the road, and they're ripping
Yeah.
through. But you can just go stand in a farmer's field and be like, cool, here we are, we're watching it.
Yeah. That's a big difference too. In Europe, they'll let you basically like toe the line
Yeah,
of the road, like you can be up close and personal.
yeah, almost like Baja.
Yeah. I've not been. I've seen pictures of Baja, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I've heard the stories and seen the pictures. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, Kendra, I thank you so much for your time
Oh,
today
of
and all of
course.
this great information. I've loved learning about it,
Oh,
and
good.
yeah, hopefully, maybe one day you'll see me at the Dirtfish
Yeah, I'd
Rally
love it.
School.
Hey, you'll definitely have to let me know if you're coming up.
Oh, yeah, you'll be my first call.
Yes. No, thanks for having me on. It's been great hanging out with you ladies.
Yeah, and in addition to the Dirtfish, we look forward to seeing you on the starting line at the Rebel.
Yeah, same. One last chance to see each other clean.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, bye.